Episode number 2 of the NPH Hour is here on News Talk Saga 960 AM. I'm your host, Jason Thom, here to bring you your weekly dose of Canadian basketball stories and interviews. We have 3 great guests on this program with a common theme, piecing them all together. Unique journeys that brought them all to where they are now, and the fact that none of them would change anything, no matter the trials and tribulations they faced along the way. So often, we become focused on the goal or the end game. We end up missing out on the joy that the process itself can bring. Someone who speaks so eloquently about that is the Vice President of Basketball and Franchise Operations of the Raptors 905, Courtney Charles, who has an amazing path he took to his current role with the Raptors G League affiliate. We also have the mother of the newest edition of the Toronto Raptors, Montreal native Khem Birch, whose decade-plus journey to the NBA and his home country's professional team is extremely interesting. We start today's show at the post-secondary level, specifically Canadian University basketball, which often takes a back seat to the glitz and glamour that comes with the NCAA Division I basketball south of the border. But that is slowly starting to change, and it's due in large part to the Canadian Elite Basketball League, a professional basketball league that plays in the summer and is just a few months away from beginning their 3rd season. Now, what is unique about the CEBL is that 70% of each team's roster must be Canadian-born players, and they got some great names coming in this year from all over the Canadian basketball landscape. On top of that, every year in the CEBL USports draft, each of the league's 7 teams select 3 players from Canada's university basketball programs to train, practice, and learn alongside pro ballers during the summer months while earning money to put towards their post-secondary education. It's a game-changing agreement between the league and USports, which should make staying home to play post-secondary basketball not a second option, but a great option. Because currently, student athletes in the United States are fighting an uphill battle to be able to sign endorsement deals, maybe earn a slice of the billion-dollar pie that is earned off of their backs, or even accept a slice of pie from the local bakery for free because the shop owner thinks they had a good game. Seriously, players in the NCAA are not allowed to accept anything that they are offered of any value because of who they are. Now, don't get me wrong, those players are getting a free education as part of their athletic scholarship. But because of the rigors of being an athlete, many struggle academically as a result. I think it's important to recognize the success stories we are seeing from Canadian basketball players that are staying at home. A perfect example is Kadre Gray. He played at 2 powerhouse Toronto high schools before deciding to join former Team Canada Olympian Sean Swords, who has been the head coach at Laurentian University in Sudbury for over a decade. Gray maximized on his potential under Coach Swords, ending his USports career as a 2-time MVP, an academic All-Canadian, and the list just goes on. What makes it even sweeter, his first professional contract also comes right here in Canada, in a league that didn't even exist when he graduated high school. So this is someone who trusted the process and put in the work without getting caught up in the end goal. Kadre, first off, congratulations on signing your first pro contract with the Canadian Elite Basketball League, the Ottawa Blackjacks. And, as someone who's truly a homegrown Canadian talent, staying here in high school, post-secondary as well, what does it mean to you that there's now a pro league here in Canada that has, rosters full of Canadian players?
Honestly, it's ridiculous. I think growing up, we never would have thought this would have been, this would have been the scenario. We would have looked at, we only saw the NBA this way. So now that, we're onto our own thing, this is amazing. We're up to something.
Now, you ended your collegiate career as one of the most prolific scorers, one of the most decorated in USports history really ever. But in talking to you, it's not those accolades that you measure your success with, but rather your progression as a player. How are you able to achieve that progression and just markedly get better every year in Sudbury, Ontario, of all places?
Yeah, I don't think anybody would have expected me to go there. Definitely 4 hours north. Most Toronto people wouldn't want to do that, but definitely I think it was just God's plan. I put him before everything I do, and I think he guided me here. And I think my recruitment trip, meeting Sean, and just seeing his story and just seeing how humble and meek he is, really made me think, you know what, I could do something similar to what he's done. And like you said, I never really was focused on, how good am I. I always focused on, am I getting better every day? And that made it easier for me to just stay focused and do what I had to do on the court.
And for those that don't know, we're talking about head coach Sean Swords, somebody who, I've come across a number of different times in basketball gyms, the Canadian national team. His background, I think it was the connection with Steve Nash, with you understanding as being a point guard, that this was somebody who was going to be able to help you because of his background. Just speak on that a little bit for me.
Yeah, definitely. Sean, he's got 10 years, I think, professional experience. Played in the Olympics. I think it was 2000, if I'm not mistaken. He's got a underrated background for basketball, I would say, and not many people know. So when we came up here and we were talking to him, it's funny because we had to find out this information. He never shared it, so it just goes to speak about how humble he is. And I think that's the person that I wanted to play for. And just made it easy. He's a great guy. So I thank you for him.
Yeah, and I mean, in the end, there's a lot more programs in U Sports now that have players running the basketball side that have that sort of background. We see it, there's much more diversity in the ranks and the coaching ranks, and also just kind of the outside the box thinking. 5 years ago, there wasn't as many options with that type of background. So what do you see now leaving U Sports, the differences from when you started?
Honestly, in terms of a talent perspective, it's been getting better every single year. That's to say the least. And then the coaching staff, the assistants that are coming in and being a part of the U Sport game, it's definitely growing. And I think more people, more athletes, are taking notice of what U Sports is doing. And I think at the end of the day, I think this is the objective. They want to play professional basketball for most of these student athletes, and they're starting to understand there's different avenues. There isn't just the NBA way of doing it. There's more avenues to do it. So, some are taking the gamble or, taking the leap of faith by going this route. And, some of them are successful. There's a number of guys I can name, like Phil, Johnny, a number of guys who've already done it. So they've kind of paved the way already.
Yeah, Kazakine is another one that
Mm-hmm.
jumps out to me as well. And you're a disciple of the Eastern Commerce basketball tree. Got to shout out my guy Kevin Jeffers. I know you'll be listening to this one.
Yeah.
But you finished up at Oakwood after the 4 years at Eastern Commerce. You had the opportunity to go the junior college route in the U.S. We have a lot of players listening right now that are facing that same sort of decision. And how much personal pride do you have kind of being part of a new generation of players that have played U Sports, represented Canada internationally, and the whole time now your goal is to play professionally? You're doing it here at home. You're part of a new wave that's really blazing a new path in basketball in this country. Do you take a lot of pride in that and hoping that the young players kind of see that there's different paths and different fits for everybody?
It's the reason why I'm rocking this today, for sure. Just to show that, there's so many different ways. I never really ever thought about Team Canada. Never played with it for the junior team, none of that stuff. But I got these opportunities really because I went down the U Sports route and what I did there. So I'm trying to shed light on all these different things that you can do going this route. But believe me, I was once upon a time like many of those athletes who, I wanted, if it wasn't Division One, it was JUCO, and then JUCO to try to get back to Division One. But I think it takes a lot of time to reflect on what do you want in your life. And there's so many different ways to do it. I think that's what many athletes don't understand. There's so many ways, and I hope that I'm a living representation of that. That you can do it, man. It doesn't matter if you can't get into Division One. I promise you, there's a different way to do it. So that's just me speaking on that behalf.
For those listening on the radio, Kadre is wearing the Team Canada, warm-up jersey,
Yep.
and he just got back. It was from you were in Puerto Rico representing Canada, right? So it's great to see that, and these competition windows have come with a lot of issues, but it's also created a lot of opportunity. And on that level of opportunity, you're really helping build an industry here when it comes to basketball in Canada. The CEBL employing basketball people. You got former players as GMs and coaches, and you've just signed with a new Canadian agent, Elias Sabet, who obviously helped found North Pole Hoops when it started. In general, the basketball community here in Canada has been held back, I think, a lot by politics and infighting, lack of working together. Do you see that there's kind of a change right now where maybe COVID is doing it? The fact that we've been without basketball for a year, that there seems to be people more willing to kind of celebrate each other's successes and understand that we can help kind of uplift each other instead of pulling each other back.
Yeah, honestly, I think before this pandemic, it would have been tough to say that like the Canadian basketball community is really tight knit, just because you would have players all over the world. But I think the pandemic really bringing most players, I would say, back to their hometowns here in Canada, has given us an ability to like reach out and meet and maybe work out together and do certain things that we couldn't do before because everybody was caught up in their contracts and stuff like that, in the scenario. So I know for myself, like, even last summer, I got an opportunity to play with a couple of the NBA guys who are Canadians, and it was a great experience. Connecting with them, meeting them, like all these things are great. You know what I mean? And it wouldn't have happened had it been before the pandemic. So I think it goes to say that, like, we're definitely, the Canadian basketball community is definitely growing. And we're starting to put together those pieces like the CEBL, which is really like kind of the hometown, bringing all the networks and vast resources that we all have, bringing them together and saying, hey, I know you, you know me, like, just that go-to. And I think it helps a lot just to say that, like, it's definitely the way we need to go, because it's going to help all of us. At the end of the day, it's going to help our community grow and be one of the leading nations, and whether that's globally or whether that's in the States. Just having that connection, it goes a long way. Like, I can't harp on it anymore, that it's so important to have those networks, so that, all of us have somebody that we can either choose to mentor, have a mentor. It goes so many ways. So yeah.
It really takes leadership, and it seems like it takes leadership from every angle. Players, coaches, doesn't matter who it is. Just understanding we go further together, right? Instead of individually. And on that, I want to be able to get to what you've been able to do off the court. We've seen basketball at all different levels just really forcing tangible change. Black Lives Matter, WNBA, NBA, everything that they've been able to stand together. The NCAA now, we see that players are coming together to try to fight for their own rights and fighting against all forms of racism, sexism. It's been really amazing to see how this sport has become a vehicle for tangible change. And now up in Sudbury, 5 years ago, when you got up there, must have been a little bit of a culture shock for you. And I know you came up there with your wife as well. And what have you been able to do, which started as something small, and explain to us what it is, how it started, and how you feel now when you see this happening as a worldwide movement?
Yeah, honestly, it's a conversation. It's a long conversation in itself. I know for myself, growing up in Toronto, a very diverse community, you meet people from different walks of life, and you kind of get to a point where you start to embrace those cultural differences, and that's what makes the community better. And I know for myself, moving up to Sudbury, it was definitely a culture shock, like you said. Like, I went from seeing different people to now, mainly Caucasian people, some people like myself, but most of them were basketball affiliated, right? So it was definitely it was a culture shock, but in the sense that I think you spoke about it, like the NBA and the WNBA, like doing all these things globally, and using their platforms, the athletes using their platforms to, talk about social change and stuff that needs to happen. I think it's just a spark. It's a testament to say that, like, these issues have always been going on. But I'm happy, the NBA, WNBA, like, they've taken notice, and they're starting to lead this initiative, because if anybody's got the platform, they do, right? A lot of us are looking at them as, before we were looking at them as just athletes, but now they're saying, hey, although we play this game, we're using our platform to talk about so many different issues that need change. And I know for myself, like, and what you were hinting on was, for myself coming up here, and I noticed there was a community issue, and just, racism was prevalent thing here. And I know I wanted to see some change. I think I had that opportunity just because, like I said, I'm not just an athlete. I'm a student before the athlete piece. I am, I'm a person that makes up this community. I connect with all the youth, and I kind of have a good idea of what the community is like. And I knew that it was an issue. And so upon myself and two other co-founders, Hedia and Alisa and Nisa, we just felt it was, it was a right opportunity to create this non-for-profit now called ULU, Ubuntu Lungisa Usawa, which stands for Humanity, Justice, and Equity. And, like I mentioned, we've just been trying to help make this community a little bit of a better place for everybody who's in it, right? Talking about, Black history, things, it's funny that we always talk about like Black History Month, for example, in February. Like, we actually don't do anything just because that's the 1 month that a lot of organizations are doing stuff, but we feel like it's a yearly thing. Like, why are we just talking about it in 1 month, and why is it the shortest month?
Of course.
So we just kind of took it upon ourselves to like take the scope and look at it even broader, and try to help people and talk about like allyship, talk about the cultural differences and how we shouldn't. Our history race is a social construct to begin with. So we're the ones that are creating the differences, but we also have the power to change the differences. So that's what fighting all about, what equity is about. And now we've just done our part in just trying to help the community.
Yeah, and you said before, it's just about having uncomfortable conversations. That's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you today for having this comfortable conversation with me, and for really, understanding what you're about, understanding what you want to do going forward, because so many times when post-secondary careers come to an end here in Canada, we don't hear about players anymore. And hopefully, your addition here to the CEBL and what that will be a launching pad for you internationally. We'll be able to kind of follow along, not only seeing what you've been able to do at the U Sports level, but now what you'll be able to do both on the court and off the court. I see great things for you in the future, my man. I really appreciate the time here today.
I love it, man. Shout out North Pole Hoops.
That was Kadre Gray of the Ottawa Blackjacks and an alumni of the Laurentian Voyageurs, a school that has been in the news recently for all the wrong reasons. But in talking to men's basketball head coach Sean Swords, the basketball program remains intact, which is great news, because the success we expect to see from that young man right there will only mean great things for the program that put him on his path to become a pro. Speaking of the professional ranks, up next we have the mother of an NBA player that has started her own platform to help share the stories of other moms of professional players in hopes of helping parents that are navigating the world of high-level basketball for the very first time. Wendy Sparks, the mother of current Toronto Raptor and Team Canada member Kem Birch, coming up next on the NPH Hour on News Talk Saga 960 AM.